You keep dancing with the devil. One day it's gonna follow you home.
A still tongue totes a level head. A real one quotes the ancestors, jesters manifesting the echo spreads. Like steel drums that awake the dead. Sop up this gravy of life with a slice of the baker's bread. Nourishment for the path ahead. Just make something they can't clone and build a throne with the truth instead. This is crazy. I should have did this in the booth instead. But I'd rather make a document and polish it for your YouTube thread. I'ma keep it a beanbag with you. Sinners just dropped the digital package with the bonus clips and deleted scenes, and watching those along with the film in the comfort of your own home hits totally different. Now I can do the usual pausing and rewinding to analyze the film better. I get to lock in with all the dialogue and pattern speech, and then the bonus material connecting with a lot of the things that I said in my first 3 videos about sinners. This is not a paid advertisement, by the way, but you can go purchase this at Amazon, Fandango, or Apple TV. And that joint comes with all the bonus material, so you can't beat it. And as for this video, we're gonna take a look at some of that bonus material, more esoteric connections, and some of the hidden meanings that I didn't talk about in my last video. Also some new things after watching the deleted scenes. But before we do that, I want to thank all of you for watching, and if you're new to Real Enigmas and Theories, welcome. This video will contain spoilers for the Sinners film and the bonus material. So now that you've been warned, let's cook. First, I want to shout out all of the actors and the way that they prepared for this film. Delroy Lindo actually learned to play the piano and the harmonica, and Miles Caton learned to play the guitar, instruments that they never played before. I mean, the way that the whole cast was dedicated to the preparation for this film was crazy. You get to see all of that in the bonus footage. All of the music and dancing throughout the film was pretty much a character of its own kind. It was actually the first character to be cast. Typically, the score of a film is done after all the scenes have been strung together. But in the case of Sinners, the music was first, and it served as a driving force for the entire project. So this level of preparation from the entire cast is why this film sticks to the ribs like catfish, grits, and gravy. But you know I gotta keep it a beanbag with you. And I feel like some of the deleted scenes should have actually made it into the film. But hey, you can't win them all. One scene in particular was the steal away scene with Jedediah's sermon when Sammy came back to the church after leaving the juke joint. We all saw Sammy arrive at the church while the children's choir was singing This Little Light, but the deleted parts of that scene were super heavy and relevant to everything we had seen in the film. When Sammy's father asked him to sing for the Lord, Sammy breaks out into the song Steal Away, written by Wallace Willis in the 1860s or the late 1850s.
You hear the call of whiskey, from slick-talking men's and loose women's.
Wallace Willis was actually enslaved by Choctaw and wrote the song Steal Away. This adds a powerful connection to a lesser-known chapter of American history, the involvement of indigenous peoples in the institution of slavery. While many indigenous groups experienced enslavement by Europeans, some tribes, including the Choctaw, adopted practices of slaveholding, and some of this was done even before Europeans hit the scene. The Choctaw enslaved Africans, other indigenous groups, and participated in social slavery as well. They aligned notably with the Confederacy during the Civil War too. Wallace Willis's music, including Steal Away, represented a complex intersection of indigenous American spirituality. Native American tribes known as the 5 civilized tribes, the Choctaw, Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole, adopted the institution of slavery. Some of them were even slave catchers. Now, just to be clear, indigenous slavery was often a result of intertribal conflict, and those captives were taken as slaves or servants even before contact with European settlers. Some slave captives became integrated into the tribes. Others were enslaved and treated harshly or used as laborers. During the Trail of Tears, Some Choctaw members transported enslaved people with them into Indian territory known as the present-day Oklahoma. Wallace Willis was a Choctaw freedman from Oklahoma. And I said freedman, not freeman. He was a freedman from Oklahoma. And hearing Sammy sing that spiritual written by him in the deleted scenes makes me wish they would have added that to the finished product for sure, because that would have been something to chew on in my first videos. First off, we get another layer of the performance from Saul Williams playing the preacher boy's father. I mean, he absolutely bodies this scene.
My voice belongeth to the Lord.
But Sammy singing a spiritual from a Choctaw freedman adds another layer to those Choctaw hunters that we saw chasing Remick in the beginning. That whole thing right there lets us know that there could have been more to that whole story. I remember part of me thought that Remick was lying about them killing his wife, but now being able to pause and rewind and see that red wedding band sitting on his finger like that, it validates some of those claims that he was saying. And the historical nuance of the Choctaw and the Irish, coupled with Sammy singing the words of a Choctaw freedman, gives that an extra touch of historical value. It didn't make it into the movie, but I am so glad that it actually did make it into the bonus footage, and we can come back here and do another video. Now, before moving off the subject of music, I have to address comments about the blues not being from Africa. I know the blues is an American art form created in the United States. However, when I said that the blues came from Africa in part 2 of my Sinners review, I was speaking on the conversation that Delta Slim was having with Sammy. He said that we brought it here with us, and I took that as him saying that the blues has origins in Africa. I don't think I made that part clear enough, but there's another deleted scene where Slim is talking to Sammy, and he says exactly what I interpreted from their conversation.
We brought this with us from home.
From the Delta.
Africa, preacher boy. Motherland.
I wasn't saying myself that I think that the blues came from Africa. That's what Delta Slim said, and my interpretation of that is correct, and you can see it in the deleted scenes. So I'm glad that that was in the deleted scenes as well. There's one of the deleted scenes that was pretty funny, and it's dope to see it without the audio and the visual effects. It's where Joan was watching Cornbread while he ran off to take a leak. Every time Cornbread hears something in the bushes, he stops and starts peeing every time he turns his head to look. And then Joan just pulls up on him like Hecate with the lantern to take him down to the underworld. It's crazy. But there's another deleted scene with Joan and Bert discussing Bert's fertility or his infertility. And in my second and third Sinners videos, I brought up how people would come to Hoodoo practitioners to address things like infertility. Some whites would go to them in secret while publicly demonizing natural healing. And this deleted scene touches on that exact subject that I was talking about directly, infertility. And while we're talking about fertility and natural healing and midwifery, I also want to point out that Mary, who was also part black, was the daughter of a natural healer as well. We can't forget that Mary's mother is who ended up birthing the twins, and she nursed them after their mother died. And midwifery is a staple in the pantheon of natural healing. Not to mention that Carolyn Dye is also brought up in the movie, right? And Mary is the name of Carolyn Dye's daughter. I spoke about Aunt Caroline in my Sinners material and other videos on my channel as well. I also talk about a show called Severance, and I've made a major connection with Severance and Sinners in my part 3 review. Both show references to the snake oil period, but this deleted scene highlights yet another major connection. Heads up for a few Severance spoilers if you haven't seen it. Anyway, this scene highlights the fact that Bert and Joan were struggling with fertility, and that scene ends with Joan finding Remick in the bedroom sitting next to a baby crib. The same thing happens in Severance, where the main character and his wife had fertility issues, and a baby crib ends up being a major part of the story. Also, Ben Stiller is the director of Severance, and he publicly spoke up for the Sinners film when a publication, Variety, had made a negative headline against their first weekend sales. And I thought that this was crazy because Joan is a part of this Severance connection, and she was actually, her name is Lola Kirk, by the way, and she appears in Mistress America with Michael Chernus, who plays Rickon in the show Severance. I'm going to go over some more of these deleted gems, but before I do that, I'm going to point out some more of the hidden meanings that I observed on my latest watch of the film. I'm telling you, watching at home in HD for the first time hit totally different. When that digital dropped, I went right to the deleted scenes before watching the film. And when I watched the film, it hit totally different in that same eye-opening way. It's definitely worth the investment. I watched it in the studio on my big speakers and noticed even more layers to the score music, which is an actual character at this point. I'd already been rocking out to the soundtrack on Spotify and my studio speakers, but being able to watch it in high definition mixed with the studio speakers brought a whole new experience that I wasn't even expecting. The juke joint scene had already stood out to me and a lot of us, but even scenes like when Delta Slim was playing at the train station and how his harmonica blended with the score and how the sound of Stack and Sammy driving when he sang for Stack the first time, all of that was just seamlessly put in there. And as an audio engineer myself, I can truly appreciate that. Now, let's get into that hidden meaning that I noticed. The traveling song made me think about the Masonic vibes that were spread throughout the film, like Smoke and Stack being Joaquin and Boaz. You had Ruth and Jedediah. You even had Mary at the end of the movie coming in there with the black and white checker jacket, the black and white checker sign that was right behind her. There was a lot of Masonic vibes in there. You also saw the compass and square inside of the church. But like I said, the traveling song really stuck out to me this time because in esoteric and Masonic tradition, Freemasons are often referred to as travelers or sojourners. Freemasonry is based on the legend of builders and the Jewish mysticism or the Kabbalah. Members are taught moral lessons through a metaphor of spiritual journey from the apprentice level all the way to Master Masons. And traveling is a metaphor for the passage through those degrees. A Master Mason is said to have traveled in foreign lands in pursuit of light, truth, wisdom, and spiritual elevation. And Smoke talks about his travels in foreign lands when he was talking to Annie about that plantation money. Masons sometimes refer to each other as traveling men or travelers. And Sammy was singing about traveling. That part was like the gather the crew structure. You know, they were on their way to go get cornbread, Annie. They first stopped and went and got Sammy. And we can't forget that Smoke and Stack are actually one and the same, being played by one person. This is that kind of like Wizard of Oz structure where the main character picks up companions along the journey. And each new companion adds like a symbolic functional layer to the quest. You see this all the time. You got like the Wizard of Oz, you got Avatar, Percy Jackson, Journey to the West. But one stands out and fits this crew in Sinners more than anything. It actually matches the motif exactly. I mean, think about it. You got broke vampires, plantation scripts, prohibition. You got the collapse of natural healing. And real quick sidebar, something else that I noticed that they pointed out was the collapse of the sawmill industry taken from the hands of actual forestry farmers. I did a super deep dive on how the natural healing and midwifery had been systematically pushed underground by those same institutions who were responsible, and they also played a hand in destroying the small lumber operations like Hogwood's. It was your Carnegie and your Rockefeller. Hogwood even states that his lumber mill used to make a lot of money and the workers used to live upstairs.
He moved a ton of timber a month back in his heyday. Workers lived upstairs.
And hearing it in my studio speakers, it also enabled me to hear Smoke describing the robberies to Bo Chow as Grace Chow was entering into the store with them. Smoke talks about how they didn't leave anything behind, and this takes me right back to those gathering the crew storyline. Smoke saying that he didn't leave anything behind zapped Robin Hood right into my brain. Robin Hood was notorious for taking every single piece of gold and silver and leaving nothing behind. The additional articles that came along with the soundtrack on Spotify spoke about the robberies committed by the twins, and they brought the loot right to the Delta to provide a place for their hometown people, robbing the rich and bringing it to the poor. Even the crew that they gathered mirrors the crew from Robin of Luxley. Cornbread represents Little John, strong and loyal. They brought him to be the muscle. Stack even taunts Cornbread the same way that Robin Hood taunted Little John, and he actually fought Little John to test to see if he was worthy of being in the crew. Stack was displaying the same vibe when he went to pick up Cornbread, even insulting his wife. Preacher Boy embodies both Friar Tuck and the miller's son. He had that spirit. He's connected to religion, the common man grounded in the peasant class. You had Pearline and Mary, and they were both young, attractive, impulsive, and rebellious, and those are attributes of Will Scarlet. Then you have Annie. She was Maid Marian, the divine feminine love interest, and also pretty much the moral compass, and she knew what was going on with the vampires. And we can't forget Delroy Delta Slim Lindo. He was obviously Alan Dale, the storyteller. Now, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor is a direct metaphor for redistributing wealth seized through unjust power structures. Communal ownership and solidarity among the working class is what Annie and Stack were trying to get Smoke to come around about the plantation money. And Robin Hood's stories inspire others to resist oppression, which aligns with the twins' mythos and narrative to mobilize that revolutionary change. And Smoke did that right there at Hogwood Sawmill. And you know them Klansmen was shocked when they had to lay there and pass on to the smell of that gumbo and catfish. Yeah, I know it was a fire and all that vampire stuff going on, but that fried catfish smell ain't going nowhere for about 2 days. Keep it a beanbag. Robin Hood's death even mirrors the motif of Sinners. Robin died by the way of betrayal and bloodletting. Come on, a vampire film and bloodletting? In the original story, Robin Hood is betrayed by a corrupt nun and then he's bled to death during a medical procedure. Smoke also bleeds out right before he hit Hogwood with the pork chopper. In his last moments, Robin Hood shoots his final arrow from his longbow and he asked to be buried wherever the arrow landed. So then his people buried him right there and then they marked the place with a gravestone. And this is very reminiscent of Smoke, with him visiting the grave and that stone at the beginning. And Robin's arrow reminds me of that conjure stick or that conjure dagger that was put into the ground at that child's assumed resting place. And that takes us right back to the bonus footage. One of the clips, entitled Spirit of the Deep South, was a great look inside of the thought process behind the voodoo aspects of the film. They even have a real dope picture of that conjure dagger. Yvonne Charoux, a professor of religion and Black studies, was the spiritual aesthetic consultant for the film, and she explained much about the approach in regards to the hoodoo aspects. She spoke about some of the exact topics that I presented in my parts 2 and my parts 3 Sinners trilogy review, like the kinship of traditions through the ancestors, the erasure of natural healing, and they even used some of the same imagery that I used in my videos. Check this out. When I saw that, I was pointing at the screen like DiCaprio. Now, I'm not just going to sit here and spoil all of the bonus material for Sinners. You have to go check it out for yourself, and then you can come back here and build with us. We're going to talk about it in the comments. So there you have it, some hidden symbolism and my take on the Sinners home viewing experience. I think it's dope. And if you like this video, tap that screen for me a few times. And if you're not subbed, hopefully this will be the video that'll make you do it. That's all for my video today. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.